Let's look at 80x to the third minus 20x squared minus 120x plus 30. Now, you need to remember that the first thing you do when you factor, you've got to factor out what? The greatest common factor. So no matter what you're doing, did it go down the wrong? Are you all right there? Yeah, well. First thing you do when you factor is always look for the GCF. Is there something common to everybody here?
Yes.
What is it?
10.
10! Yes, say it like you mean it, which is great. There's no or so that was fantastic.
Okay.
Good job. I'm going to factor out my 10, and what do I have? Wait a minute. No or ums. Just say the answer.
Wouldn't it be x squared? X to the third.
Ax to the third.
Minus 2x squared minus 12x
Right.
plus 3.
Now, the first thing is always look for the GCF for everybody. Now, I have 4 terms, and what we're going to see is that when you have 4 terms, you look to factor by grouping, right? That's what we had already talked about. So what I want to do is I'm going to take all of this stuff, excuse me, all this stuff here. I'm just going to do my little thought bubble. I'm going to say, you know what? What happens to him?
Little thought bubble. The big thought bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Your big thought bubble. So if I look here, what is the common factor?
2.
Really? 2?
2x
squared.
I wasn't done.
Well, it sounded like you were done. 2x squared, and if I factor the 2x squared, what do you have?
4x. 4x.
I have 4x. Do I need to have a minus 1?
Yes.
As we've seen before, having that plus or minus 1 is going to be important to us because it's what's left over from that term. Because if you took negative 2 divided by positive 2, you get negative 1, right? Okay. Now, in the second group, I have a negative 12x plus 3. What's the common factor there?
3.
Well, you got to be careful.
Negative
3x.
It starts with a negative,
yeah.
so you put the minus here, and it's a minus 3. And then you take out the negative 3, what's left?
4x.
It better be 4x minus 1 unless somebody made a mistake, right? What's negative 3 times negative 1? Does that give me the positive 3 that I had before? Yes. Does that give me the negative 12x? Yes. Everything checks out. Now keep going with the factorization. So what do we have?
4x minus 1. And then 2x squared minus 3.
We needed times 2x squared times 10, right?
Now this is all in my thought bubble, right? So the 8x cubed and all this other stuff becomes this. The 10 is also part of my factorization, right? He's part of that product. So at the very end, you have 10, and you just have the rest of these factors. So that's 4x minus 1 and 2x squared minus 3. Is that okay?
So it wouldn't be 20x squared minus 3?
Yeah. And then
No. See, the question was, wouldn't it be 20x squared minus 3? The answer is no, because my factor 10 was already pulled out front. And I'm just bringing down these other factors, the 4x minus 1 and the 2x squared minus 3. Do I have to write this? Right, because I'm writing my entire factorization. My original polynomial becomes this completely factored. There's nothing else to do with 4x minus 1, nor is there anything you can do with 2x squared minus 3.
Well, didn't we do one problem a few problems back where we times what we took out?
Right, because there were things that we could actually multiply together. You're talking about when I took out 7x to the 5th
Yeah.
and I took out 2?
Yeah.
Those were monomial factors that you could actually multiply together to get 14x to the 5th. If I multiply this out times 4x minus 1 or 2x squared minus 3, then I'm putting a common factor back in, and I don't want to do that. I want to break out everything as much as I can. Now, there's another way of doing this, which a lot of people will probably do because you will forget to look for the GCF and make me angry. I mean, really, what can I expect from you guys? That you would listen to me?
No.
No.
You want to hear, right?
Yeah. You're only hearing what you want to hear.
Huh?
Yeah, my parents used to say that to me all the time. Yeah, you'd hear them say, you can have a cookie after you finish your food. Okay, I want him a cookie. But you said I could have a cookie. There's conditions. Now, when I look at this guy, if I just jump straight into factoring by grouping, what's the common factor in that first group?
20x squared.
Common factor is 20x squared, and then what would I be left with?
48x.
Nope. I'd have 4x minus 1, right? What's the common factor in the other group?
30 minus 30.
So minus 30, and I'd be left with what?
4x minus
Should be 4x minus 1. And then we would take this 4x minus 1 and write that up front. And the other part of the factorization would be 20x squared minus 30. Now you got to watch out here. 4x minus 1 is done. You can't do anything else with that. What about 20x squared minus 30?
You can do it by 10.
There's a common factor of 10. Now since that common factor of 10 is a monomial factor, I'd write it out front like this. So you're taking this guy right here and you're saying that this is equal to 10 times what?
2x squared minus 3.
So I'm writing the 10 up front. Here's my 4x minus 1. And then the other part of the factorization was 2x squared minus 3. So it's still the same answer that I had, it's just a different way of going about that. Now the reason I may not necessarily prefer you doing it this way is because a lot of students will get to here and then they stop. But you always look to see if there's a common factor that may be missing. There's nothing left in 4x minus 1. The 20x squared minus 30 does have that common factor of 10. Okay. But really, the first thing you should do is always look for the GCF. Always. It makes your number smaller and usually makes the problem easier to work.